and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm here to talk about the books I've been reading recently and kind of give you my review, my thoughts on them. I've had a lot of requests of people asking for me to get this video up because what I tend to do is put up a list of books that I'm going to be reading in the next month, and then at the end of that month I generally do a wrap up. I just have not got around to wrapping up the books that I said I was going to be reading. I believe it was in May. So I've actually read these books over May and June. I just got so busy. We had my birthday and Father's Day. We went away for my birthday and we also went and visited the Warner Brothers studio tours in London. So we've been quite busy and I just haven't had as much reading time or filming time as usual. But I'm here now, I've got my notebook all ready and I'm going to take you through the books that I have been reading and if I've liked them or not. So the first book I want to talk about is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I downloaded the audiobook and started to listen to it, and I knew that it was one I wanted to read in person, like in actual book form and not actually listen to. I wasn't over keen on the narrator. So I decided to wait. I used my Libby app. It's like a library service. I put a hold on the book I wanted, and when I started reading this book I knew straight away I was gonna love it. So the ageing movie star Evelyn Hugo is finally ready to tell the tale of her scandalous life in Hollywood, and she doesn't want to tell it to just anybody. She picks a particular journalist called Monique Grant, who is basically a nobody in the publishing world, and Monique cannot figure out why Evelyn has picked her. Evelyn is like this massive movie star, but she will not tell the story to anyone else. So Monique says that she will listen, and Evelyn begins to tell her about her life, and it just takes you through all the different stages of her acting career, right from when she was born to where she lived to how she got into acting. And as the story unfolds we begin to realise that her life is actually connected to Monique's in a way that you could not have imagined. And it's an amazing book. I gave it a 5 out of 5. It really touched on some important subjects. Aside from the Hollywood glamour and the behind the scenes look into acting and how it was to be in the spotlight back in the 50s, it also had a lot of deep underlying messages about love and life and choices, and how what you see in the public eye isn't always what's going on beneath the surface. Evelyn is such a cool character. She's just so likeable. I think not everyone would like her, but I think she's such a likeable person. And Monique, again, I didn't like her at the beginning, but they sort of form this, not even a friendship, but almost like an alliance. I don't want to give too much away, so I'm not going to talk about it too much, apart from the fact that I highly recommend it, and I gave it a 5 out of 5. I absolutely love it, and that is by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I haven't read any of her others, but I am looking at picking up Daisy Jones and the Six. So if any of you have read that, let me know, and let me know what you think of it compared to Evelyn Hugo, but I absolutely loved it. So the next book I read or started to read was Vexx King, and that was called Good Vibes, Good Life. Yes, Good Vibes, Good Life. It's basically like a self-help book, I suppose. In it, he talks all about putting yourself first and raising above criticisms, and how important it is to see life from your own eyes and not through other people's eyes. Stop trying to people please, that kind of thing. I actually didn't finish the entire book because the app that I use to read with, you only get 3 weeks and then your book expires, and if other people are waiting then they take it back, a bit like a library, and you can renew it, but if someone else is waiting then you can't renew it straight away. So I did like what I read. It does seem to be, because I follow him on Instagram, it does seem to be very much of a repeat of what he posts daily over there. So if you do follow Vexx King on Instagram and you do read the quotes and things, a lot of that is repeated throughout the book, so I don't feel like I took away anything new from it. And I can't really rate it because I didn't get to the end, but I don't think it's something I would go out and buy just because of the fact that it was repeating what was already out there on social media. But the idea behind it is really good, and there are some fantastic quotes in there, especially if you're struggling with like the, I suppose, like social media side of life, like looking on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or YouTube and seeing a certain kind of life portrayed. It does help you to separate that from the fact that obviously everyone is going to be posting their best bits and life isn't a show reel. I think the message he tries to get across is just to look within yourself for happiness, not at other people. Really interesting, but like I said, probably not much in it that you couldn't find from his social media. The next book I read was called The Last Thing to Burn by Will Dean. I loved this book, and it's really hard to say because it's a really harrowing subject, so I always find it difficult to say, like if I read like a murder case, I hate to say, oh, I love that book, because obviously someone died and it's not, you know, something you should love. But this was such a well-written book. It drew me in from the first sentence and I did not want to put it down. It involves the story of a young woman. She is held captive by a man as part of like a human trafficking ring. So there are a lot of triggers in this book. She's emotionally and physically abused, and she is stuck with him on this farmhouse, and she does try and escape several times and fails, and it just follows her journey. It's also really opens your eyes to the fact that these things happen. I think the author really covered the topic well, and if you like, I'd say it's a thriller, but it's also quite factual, but it's very, very heartbreaking as well. It is a tough read, but I recommend you reading it, especially if you like that kind of thing. And when I say like, I know that you know what I mean, but that's The Last Thing to Burn by Will Dean, and yeah, 5 out of 5 for me. That will be one, don't pick it up when you're about to go to sleep, because you'll be up till 2 in the morning trying to get it finished. I absolutely loved it. The next book I read was actually a children's book, or I believe we call them middle grade. So it's kind of like the Harry Potter age 8 to 12, I believe it is, that sort of era. And this was The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. I don't really know what else to say about this book other than it was just lovely. So many people recommended it. So basically it follows Arthur, who is a 40-year-old man who works in the department for, I think it's called the Care of Magical Children. So not everyone in the world is magical and not every child is magical, but there is a magical community. Some of these children are orphans and they get sent to these different orphanages, and it's Arthur's job to visit the orphanages and make sure that everything is working as it should be and the children are being looked after as they should be. But these children are very much seen as outsiders and dangerous to the normal, like, human race. So Arthur is sent on a mission to a specific orphanage where he meets all kinds of different children and the guy who runs it. And it's just such a lovely story. There is some really nice messages to be found in it. I think it's a really good one for the age bracket, especially. I think Oscar, my son, he's 10. I really like the way it deals with the same-sex relationships and how being different isn't necessarily bad, and how it doesn't matter what other people think of you, how people can be very different from one another but still all get along and live together, and how you can find family in the most peculiar of places, how it's never too late to start again. It's just got some really lovely messages and it's just feel good. So if you want something, and it is a children's book, but it's not, I would almost even say it's a bit more young adult than children's. It's definitely towards the latter age. I'm not sure if 8 years old personally for me would be a little bit young. So as an adult, I thoroughly enjoyed it. If you like magical realism, if you like whimsical, happy, I don't know, it's just really well done, really well written, and I give it another 5 out of 5. So we're doing well so far. But that is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. It's a feel-good read. If you want to feel nice and happy and just be taken away from everything that's going on in the world today, then I 100% recommend this book. The next book I read was by Lucy Diamond. I have read loads and loads of Lucy Diamond books, and this was An Almost Perfect Holiday. And it is set in Cornwall. I love books that are set in Cornwall. I read books that are set in Cornwall like more than any other kind of holiday book, or if it's set on a holiday in particular. It follows 3 families that book a holiday. There's like 3 lodges set around a swimming pool and 3 different families turn up. I really enjoyed it. It's very easy reading, but there is a bit more of a story to it as well. I like the fact that it involved a family with teenagers, so it's kind of highlighted how difficult it can be to keep teenagers entertained on like a UK staycation holiday, which is the kind of thing we do quite a lot. That you've then got a new mum of twins who is really struggling, really finding things difficult. She's got a lot of history that she needs to work through until she can find herself becoming a better mother, and she's just frazzled, as every new parent would be, ×2. You've got a blended family in there as well, and I just really like it. Again, it's another really easy read, takes your mind away, and if you're not into thrillers or murders or horror or anything, then I highly recommend it. And that is An Almost Perfect Holiday by Lucy Diamond. I'd probably give that a 4 out of 5 just because there are a few parts that I felt a little bit drawn out. but apart from that I absolutely loved it and I would definitely read it again. The next book I read was called A Year in the Chateau by Sarah Long. I wanted to love this, I really did, and it's the only book other than the Vexx King book, and that was because that one was actually returned before I'd finished it, but that I did not finish. I just couldn't finish it. So basically it's about these sort of couples in their late 30s, early 40s, most of them, and one of them decides that they've had enough of life and living at home and having their older teenagers who are off at college and stuff, treating their house like a hotel. And basically they come up with this idea that if they sold their house and all their group of friends sell their houses too, they could all club together and buy a chateau in France. And I thought it was a really good idea because I love France, I love chateaus, I love Escape to the Chateau, the Dick Strawbridge TV series, I absolutely love that. I love the idea of moving somewhere massive like that with like the whole family, would be amazing. It's just too far-fetched that this couple decided to just ring round their friends and say, hey, do you fancy giving up your entire life, selling your house and moving to France? And they all just went, oh yeah, okay then. And within like, it seemed within a month they were gone. Not one of the couples or people they asked said no. They just all went, and I thought that was really strange to start with, because you have these grand plans, don't you, but it's highly unlikely that everyone you say, oh, do you fancy moving to France, is going to go, oh yeah, all right then. So that was really highly unbelievable, and from there just nothing happened, like literally nothing happened. And I hate saying it, and I'm sure she's a really good writer, the writing was great, like the writing style, but I was just bored. And I never say that with books, like ever, I hardly ever don't finish a book. I just couldn't. I just found myself thinking, like, you know, when you think about something else, like, oh, I wonder what I'm going to have for dinner tonight, and oh, is it time to go and do this or that? And I'm like, no, you're supposed to be like reading a book. I'm really sorry, but I could not finish it. I really don't recommend it. It was just really boring, and I didn't really care what happened to the characters in the end because I didn't like any of them in the first place. So that makes me such an awful like book reader. But I thought, you know, I'm going to do these reviews, and if I'm going to do them and I'm going to put book content out there, then I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to tell you I love something just because loads of other people loved it. I didn't love it. I absolutely hated it, and I've never read a more boring book in my life. Sorry. But that's it. I just didn't like it, and I hate saying it, but I really didn't. So the next book I read was also called The Holiday by TM Logan. So the main character Kate decided that she wanted to celebrate her 40th birthday with her friends, so they booked this villa in Provence, and when they arrive, Kate suspects that her husband is having an affair and that it is with one of her best friends. So she tries to dig a little bit deeper and find out what's going on. There's a lot of secrets being kept, there's a lot of messages backwards and forwards, and it's basically a tale of deduction, and she's trying to work out which friend is having an affair with her husband and when it started and what happened and why. But as things unfurl, we realise it goes a lot deeper than that, and there's a lot more sinister things that come into play, and there are secrets being kept for a very good reason, and it's all very chilling and mysterious, and you don't get it right up until the end, which I like. It's not obvious from the beginning what actually has happened or does happen, and I'm going to leave it at that. I loved it. I'd give it another 5-star. I just think it was really gripping. The whole way through I thought, right, this is what's going to happen, and then it would change and I'd be like, oh, it's her, and then it would change again and again, and I didn't guess any endings, any final plot. I just kept going in all different directions the whole time, which I love. I hate it picking up a book going page 2, I know what happens, and then it happens and you think, oh, well, I was kind of hoping it'd be different. This one, my mind just kept going off in different directions. Actually, with Kate, I love the setting. I love shared holidays in villas, like I've said. I just think we've done it several times with family, like with Steve's sister, and obviously not in those circumstances, but I love the shared holiday. I love the dynamic of how people get on when they don't live together but they holiday together, and we love doing it, but I just think it's so interesting how sometimes things can fall apart so easily. and the sunny setting and the descriptions, and I just loved it. I thought it was a really, really good book, and I highly recommend it. So that is The Holiday by TM Logan. So those are all the ones that I said that I would be reading, and that is my wrap up of those. So for this month, I'm just going to include in this video what I'm going to be reading next, or what I'm currently reading. And so the next kind of my favourites, or what I've been reading recently, will be an amalgamation of these books. So at the moment I'm currently reading The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I have only just started it. I've had so many recommendations for this book, so I've got high hopes for this. So I'm just going to read the synopsis, and it basically says, Nora's life has been going from bad to worse. Then at the stroke of midnight on her last day on earth, she finds herself transported to a library. There she's given the chance to undo her regrets and to try out each of the other lives she may have lived, which raises the ultimate question, given the choice, which is the best way to live. I think it's a really interesting idea. I love the idea that you get to go back and try different lives and different paths, and we'd all love to do that, wouldn't we, and just see how they turned out without actually committing to anything. I just think it'd be amazing to like go back 20 years and think, oh, if I did that instead of that, what would have happened, but never actually have to undo everything you've already got. So yeah, I really like the idea of that one. I'm also planning to read What Have I Done by Amanda Prowse, and it says, could you destroy your family to save your children? Catherine Brooker seems like the very picture of a fulfilled wife and mother. Anyone who peered through the downstairs window at the four figures sitting around her kitchen table would see a happily family without a care in the world. They would envy Catherine her perfect life, but they would be wrong. Catherine is trapped in a nightmare, and she's about to do something to change it, something only a truly desperate woman would do. And that was it. I saw that come up. I believe I actually bought this book on Kindle. It came up at 99p. I always check Kindle daily deals if you have Amazon and you have a Kindle. Every morning when I get up, it's really sad, I get my coffee, I sit down, and then I check Kindle daily deals, and they always have about 4 or 5 books for 99p, and then the next day they go back up to full price. So it's worth having a look. Just click on the Kindle store and look at the daily deals, and this was one I bought for 99p, and yeah, I just think that sounds amazing. So that is What Have I Done by Amanda Prowse. So the next book I'm hoping to read is another kind of self-help book, and that is called, what's it called? Untamed by Glennon Doyle. So from the back it says, who were you before the world told you who you had to be? Part inspiration, part memoir, Untamed explores the joy and peace we discover when we stop striving to meet the expectations of the world and instead dare to listen and trust in the voice deep inside us. From the beloved New York Times bestselling author, speaker and activist Glennon Doyle, and that is called Untamed. I just thought it sounded quite good. I've heard a lot of good things about it. I just think it sounds really interesting, so I've got that on my Libby app. The other book I'm hoping to read this month is called The Push, and that is by Ashley Audrain. And from the back of this we've got, I think she pushed him. I said to you quietly, I think she pushed him. The arrival of baby Violet was meant to be the happiest day of my life, but as soon as I held her in my arms, I knew something wasn't right. I'd always known that the women in my family aren't meant to be mothers. My husband Fox says I'm imagining it. He tells me I'm nothing like my own mother, and Violet is the sweetest child. But she's different with me. Something feels wrong. Is it her? Is it me? Is she the monster, or am I? And it says it's an unsettling, breathtaking and powerful read about obsession and our deepest fears that will stay with you long after you turn the final page. So that is The Push by Ashley Audrain, and I think that sounds really good. The only other book that I am waiting for on hold is The Kiss Quotient. It says it's high time for Stella Lane to settle down and find a husband, or so her mother tells her. This is no easy task for a wealthy, successful woman like Stella, who also happens to have Asperger's. Analysing data is easy, handling the awkwardness of one-to-one dates is hard. She decides to hire a male escort to teach her how to be a good girlfriend. Faced with mounting bills, Michael decides to use his good looks and charm to make extra cash on the side. We can tell what's going to happen, can't we? Basically, Stella approaches him with an unconventional proposal. The more time they spend together, the harder Michael falls for this disarming woman with a beautiful mind, and Stella discovers that love defies logic. I just think that sounds really nice. It says heart-tugging, sexy and utterly joyful. The Kiss Quotient is a book for anyone who has been in love or lust. and it gets really high reviews, so I'm going to have a look at that one as well. So hopefully this video has made sense. I feel like I haven't done one for ages, so it's kind of rambly, but that's my books I've been reading recently, and a lot of favourites in there, a lot of really, really good books. Highly recommend Evelyn Hugo and The House in the Cerulean Sea. Last Thing to Burn by Will Dean was just stunning. If I would read any of them, it'd have to be The Last Thing to Burn. Would have to be my monthly favourite book. It is the one that I will say to everyone, have you read this first? And Evelyn Hugo is a very, very close second. So that is all my reading recommendations. I will try and leave them all linked in the description box down below if you're interested, or if you've missed anything. And if you're going to read along, or if you've read any of the books I've mentioned, then I'd love to hear from you. If you've got any recommendations, then even better, because I will read anything pretty much. So I'm always looking for new things that will keep me entertained. Reading is very, very therapeutic for me at the moment, and I've just rediscovered a love for it. So I will keep sharing these videos, and I hope you keep watching. Subscribe if you're not already, and I'll be back really, really soon with another video. Take care, guys.